Hello, today I'm going to be demonstrating the installation of Ricochet's half-inch UHMW skid plate set on a Polaris Ranger 900 crew. The first thing you need to do for this installation is to remove all of the stock plastic factory skid plates. I've already done that on this machine. Once you get all the factory stuff removed, you're ready to install your Ricochet set. Before you start mounting plates though, you need to take the tap and the tap handle that we've supplied with your kit, and you need to cut threads in the frame anywhere along here where there's a hole that's dimpled. Polaris has already put a hole there that's dimpled like they do, you know, to mount their factory skids, but they haven't threaded all the holes. We're going to pick up pretty much all those mounts, you know, down here alongside of the frame. There's a couple in the middle, there's 3 at the rear that have that hole, and like I say, they're dimpled, the metal's flared up. We just need to take a tap and cut the thread through it for the bolts. That's already taken care of on this machine, so I'm not going to demonstrate it, but that'll be the first step, is to tap all your holes. Once you get all the holes tapped, then you're ready to start the installation of your plate. I'm going to start with the M1 plate here, the front belly skid piece, work our way back, and then we're going to do the top piece last. It doesn't really matter what order you start in. You can start from the rear, work your way to the front, and you can start from the front and work your way to the rear. But I'm just going to start with the front belly plate, work my way back, and then end up with the top piece last. So at that point, you'll take your Ricochet skid plate and some of your cup washers and the bolts that we're providing. And get it up into position. Line it up with the holes. And start your bolts. And then we're not going to tighten everything down just yet. We're going to leave all the bolts loose until we have the whole set installed. That way, if there's any adjustment that needs to be made just to get the plates to line up, everything's still loose and you can move it around for the best fit. If you start tightening the plates down, you tighten this plate down, you tighten this plate down, you get to your third or your last plate, you're out of adjustability because you've essentially locked the plates down. So, like I say, leave everything loose. Once you get a couple bolts started, it can just hang, and then you can come in and just start the rest of the hardware. Like I say, just leave everything loose. Just get them all started by a few threads. Don't torque anything down yet. Okay, so that's all the mounting hardware for this plate. Like I say, everything's loose. You know, this plate can still move around for adjustment, the best fit. I haven't started these 2 rear holes yet because those are going to be a common mount with the next plate. And these are going to be their longer 25mm bolt. Anywhere where it's the shallow counterbore is going to be a common mount with the next plate down the line, and it uses a different bolt, the longer bolt than these flange bolts that are being used on these other mounts here. So now we're actually ready to install the next plate down the line. Before we do that, you've got a couple clamps you need to hang. It's these clamps that we provide. And they're going to go around the side of the frame rail right here, just behind this cross member right here. Just to hang them on. Don't necessarily worry about where they're placed so much right now. There's a hole in the plate. You can go through and actually adjust them. So just hang those around the frame and just let those be for now. And now we're ready to move on to the next. Okay, now like I said, we've got our clamps hung on the side here. Those are going to pick up these mounts right here. And like I say, you've got that hole in there, so you'll be able to get your finger in there and slide the clamp into position. This is the biggest and the heaviest plate on the set. It's a little cumbersome. If you have a buddy, it might not hurt to have 2 people get this one in place. I don't, so I'm going to give it a go myself. And it's just going to slide up. You'll see where the 2 plates are going to interlock. And this plate is going to slide underneath this one. Okay, that wasn't too bad. I guess a buddy on that one helps. It's a little big. Okay, so let's just go ahead and start these clamps. Okay, now that we've got this plate hung, I'm going to go ahead and just start the bolts for these clamps that we've already hung on the side here. And for any of the hardware that we're providing, like the clamps or a nut plate that has the nut welded to it, you're going to want to put anti-seize on those bolts. That nut that's welded to the plate has a locking feature, and the anti-seize helps it go in. It's also going to keep it from corroding and rusting. And you know, if you need to pull them off down the road for any reason or whatnot, your hardware should come out pretty easy. It wouldn't hurt to put anti-seize on everything, but you definitely want to put it on all these 8mm bolts. So, and again, we're not going to tighten them down. I'm just going to get them started. A little anti-seize on the thread. Doesn't take much, just a little smear. Okay, so those are started. Now I can go through and start just the rest of the bolts like we did on the top plate. It's going to be these cup washers. Okay, and now we can go through and actually start these two mounts now that we've got this second plate into place. And like I say, those are going to be your longer bolts. They are a silver zinc plated instead of a gold zinc plated. And again, we're not tightening anything yet. Just make sure the plate nests together pretty well here and whatnot, and that all your cup washers are, you know, seated down into the counter bores. And then, like I say, we'll go back and tighten everything later. So that takes care of that plate, and we can go ahead and move on to the next plate now. And this one, it's gonna tuck under this plate where it's, you know, been relieved, kind of the same way this one did. And all of the cup washer mounts on this plate are common except for the very two rear. So I'm just going to start those. And now we can go through and do these front four, which I see, like I said, they're the common mount, so it's going to be that longer bolt. And again, not tightening anything, just snugging it down. Okay, so that leaves us these two mounts in the rear. And those are going to be your bolts with the washer and the spacer, and then another washer and a nut. And the spacer on these bolts, like where they're used on the clamps, where they're going to be used back here and then on the rear plate, the spacer is actually to keep from over tightening the bolt and just pulling it through the plastic. It's essentially a stop. You know, there is some compression, so it will sandwich the plastic down to hold the plate on tight, but you're not going to be able to just keep going, and you can actually pull these bolts right through the plastic if without that. So that's what the spacers for. It's essentially just a stop. So this is going to be your bolt with a heavy duty washer with the spacer, and you're going to run it up. There's a hole in the frame back here that you're going to pick up. You're going to put the washer over the top of that and then follow it up with a nut. And we're going to do the same thing over on the other side here. Okay, that takes care of all that. Like I say, we're going to leave everything loose, so now we can move on to the next plate. That's this rear plate here. It's going to have 3 of the cup washers with the longer bolts for the front mounts. And then it's going to be the bolts and these nut plates for the other 4. So let's just start with the 3 common right for now. Get the plate into position. You're just going to bring it in, line the slot up with the hole, and start your bolt. Okay, that gets those 3 started. Okay, so now we're going to take the nut plate off the bolt. We're going to put a little anti-seize on those bolt threads. Hold the plate up, put the bolt through the skid plate. There's a hole in the frame for it. And then you're going to take the nut plate and thread it onto the bolt. I want to do that same thing for the other side. Okay, now that leaves us the 2 rear mounts. Those are probably actually easier to get to from the back. It's the exact same hardware as we just used in the 2 front spots. And you're going to take this nut plate. If you look from underneath, you'll be able to see the opening in the frame that the bolt's going to run through. You need to drop this nut plate into the frame just behind the differential here. It's a little tight, but not too bad. Once you get it in there, it'll pretty much just fall into position, and then you can start your bolt. go. Okay, so that's all of the hardware started for these belly skids. And at this point, we're ready to start tightening everything down. So what you want to do is just make sure your seams are good, that the plates are butting up against each other nicely, they're sitting down nicely. All your cup washers are seated. If you're happy with everything, the way that everything fits, this is looking pretty good as far as all the seams and the cup washers sitting down. If you're happy with it, you can just go ahead and start tightening things down. I recommend using a hand wrench. Just for the length of the video, I'm going to use an impact. It's a little bit quicker. It's not a very strong one, but if you do use an impact, just be careful. There's not a ton of thread in these frame holes and you can strip them out. So just be wary of that. Like I said, that's why I recommend using a hand ratchet, but it's up to you. Okay, so one more. That takes care of all of our 6mm bolts. Now we can go through and we can tighten the clamps. Ow, those nut plates, watch that tire. Clamps here and the nut plates, they're a 13mm bolt. 13mm socket, 13mm head. To get a wrench on these. And you'll probably need to get a wrench on these nut plates on the side as well, just so they don't rotate on you. The back mounts you don't need to get a wrench on, they're captured, they will not spin. That leaves us one more here. Okay, so all the belly skids are on. We are ready to mount this top plate here. And this is just going to be bolts and nuts and washers. So you're going to take your bolt with your heavy duty spacer, and your heavy duty washer and your spacer. And you're going to take your plate, you're going to get it up into position. You're going to take your bolt, run it through. You're going to put a washer on top, and then follow that up with a nut. And there's 6 of those mounts. Okay, so after you get everything started, just make sure the plate is square, lined up with everything. All right, that looks pretty good. And then it's just a matter of tightening the bolts. You will need a wrench to hold on to the nut. Just grab the nut from the side and then tighten it down. And there you have it. That's the Ricochet half-inch UHMW skid plate set for the Polaris Ranger 900 crew. There's no drilling at all involved in this set. Everything is strictly bolt-on. You do have to tap out the the holes that are already there in the frame from Polaris, but other than that, you don't have to do any drilling at all. So once you get everything all tapped out, then it's just a matter of nuts and bolts and bolting her down. Like I say, everything interlocks and overlaps, so you end up with nice smooth transitions between the plates. You don't have any hard edges. This plate up here has a nice beveled, steep chamfered edge, so it's not a real hard spot to catch up on anything. As you can tell, this machine actually has an aftermarket bumper on it, so there's really no way to bring it up and attach anything here. So that's where that hard chamfer, or that chamfered edge is, so you don't have a hard edge to catch. Get you up and over, slide over the obstacles real nice and easy. Especially with this UHMW, it slides exceptionally well, doesn't hang up, like some other materials do. So, like I say, half-inch protection for your Ranger 900 crew. Installation should probably be an hour or so. Thanks for watching.